everybody, I was out of town this weekend, but everybody here in the comedy universe is thinking about Brody Stevens, who passed away. And the news articles were everywhere. I'm sure you saw them all over the internet. And, Brody, Brody was a one-of-a-kind performer. And people say that a lot, but Brody kind of, he loved like knowing where people were from and being able to relate to people, especially people from California. He was a friendly guy. He was big, but he was gentle. He was a really gentle fella. And and it's just, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, and I've been thinking about it a little bit and called a couple people that had spoken to him last and talked to him this week, and he'd been talking about how he was off his medication. He was struggling, or he'd gone off and was getting back on. And that seems to be what most people are attributing his uncomfort to, or the depth of his uncomfort, that it got to a point where he took his own life, and where he took his own life by, even hanging himself. And that, it's just scary. It's very sad. It's heartbreaking to know that this human, this big entity, he was 6'4", maybe. He was, he was loud, and he was so alive on stage. He used to pitch baseball at Arizona State. He liked to play the drums. He would drum on anything. Sometimes during his sets, if the sets weren't going good, he would just get drumsticks or even invisible drumsticks and just start playing on the chairs and the stage or whatever. He just like any comedian, he loved the attention. He loved the, there was some equation in the getting attention from a stage that made him feel okay. It made him feel okay. And it's just wild. It's like you think like, oh, well, the medicine, are you angry at the medicine? But then the medicine may have been what kept him comfortable for many years. He'd had an instance years ago where he went off his medication and it didn't. He had to be 5150'd, I think. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he went to he went into a kind of a psychosis bit. But I didn't know Brody super well. I would see him at the store. We would talk. Nothing real outlandish, but he was always, nothing of a ton of depth, unless we were in a conversation together as with other people, or unless specifically I was talking to him about baseball or vitamins. He loved to talk about vitamins and different things he did to make himself feel better. One thing that I noticed in looking and thinking about him and looking back at watching him perform, he always talked about positive energy. He'd say, positive energy. And I always thought, I was like, man, it's so wild that that's his creed. It was kind of the banner that he carried. It was, he had to tell us all, like, we have to be forward, onward. He was a definition of onward. It was constantly like, lifting spirits. That was his thing. And now I kind of maybe, I realize, or I wonder if maybe he was also just really lifting his own. He always talked about the positive energy because he needed to lift his own spirits. And, you wonder, like, you watch someone's act on stage and you wonder how much of it is real and how much of it is, it's like, what's for the audience and what's for the entertainer themselves. And part of the thing I think in looking back at Brody, and this is just my perception, I could be wrong, and it doesn't matter if I'm wrong or right, but that he was, he was entertaining the crowd, but at the same time he was lifting himself up. Like all the times he talked about relating to people. Like he would ask somebody where they played, where they went to high school, and they'd say, I went to high school at Reseda Middle. And then he'd rattle off the address of the Reseda Middle. I know where that is. That's at blah, 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 Antioch Boulevard or something. And then he would say relatable, like he had related to the person in the audience. And I guess now I'm just kind of dissecting, some of this the way. And so I guess it was like, he used these moments on stage to preach the things that he needed for himself, it seemed like, or to not preach them, but to kind of speak them the best way he could, that he needed to feel related to, and he needed to have positive energy constantly to keep himself motivated and excited. And that's how he did it, that he facilitated that through getting on the stage a lot. And it's just, it's just interesting. It's interesting how many times I sit there and watch somebody's act and I'm like, oh, this is an act. But then how many times am I thinking, oh, what in here are the tools or the exponents that this entertainer is using to actually keep themselves okay today, to keep themselves well, mentally well. And then I thought Brody hung himself. And that's just so, it's so crazy. It's so foreign. It's so alien to think someone standing on top of something, putting a rope around. There's just so many physical moments you have to go through to do that. And, now, if you're a short guy, it's probably not that, it's easy. Hell, you could hang yourself off of a handle on a shiffer robe, probably, if you had a big, tall man, and he was a 300, Brody was probably 250. He was thick. He had those brontosaurus. He was brontosaurus. He had them big bones, I mean, you might see his bones on the Flintstones. He had those kind of bones. Them thick hitters, baby. He had that dude was marrow plentiful. He probably had about 2 pounds of marrow in him. Straight marrow. And you think about somebody going through those motions. And I'm sorry to talk about some of this, but, I think I need to think about it. And then I'm not sorry to talk about it, because this is what this is. But it makes me sad. The first thing you think is like, could I have done something else? And it's, I hate to say this, but I feel like his death maybe was unpreventable. And I never thought about this before whenever someone that I knew had taken their life but Brody got a lot of attention at the Comedy Store on performing. He had friends that he was close to that, they talked about mental health. He talked about mental health a lot. Like, that's another thing. If I was switching doses or something, excuse me, I take antidepressants. I take, I don't know what mine is, sertraline or whatever. I think it's Lexapro. I take one of those, and I'm switching to something else called Vibrid. But he talked a lot. You could talk to him about that, and he would tell you kind of what his experience had been if he had taken something of that, or taken something similar, or just, he would always, he seemed like a lifeguard a little bit on the edge of the pool of mental wellness. And if you were in the pool, he wasn't like that lifeguard that was over there with the glasses on and the whistle just trying to fuck everybody, and skeeting out with a little sunscreen here and there. and saying they're going to get a soda, but really they're going out to their car to get a little hit of weed and come back in there. And then they're supposed to save people when they're high on weed, like people in my hometown used to. I remember going to the lifeguard one time, dude, a friend of mine, I thought he was drowning, and the lifeguard was like, man, I'm fucked up, bruh. And that was it, dude. So I had to go and try to rescue my friend, man, and thank God I was able to help. And an old man helped, who I thought, honestly, in hindsight, pedophile, man. Not even, because he kept helping him. Like, he helped him out of the pool, then he helped him back into the locker room, then he was toweling my buddy, dude. My buddy, what the fuck's going on out here? But anyway, he was like that lifeguard that was on on the edge of the pool of mental wellness, and he could help you. He was there to talk to you if you needed to, and he was a caring guy. He had a big heart. And I think if there's anything that we all think we relate to the world personally. So if there's anything that I feel remorse for in my own little life, it is that I didn't get to know the big heart that was inside of him better. That I didn't make more of an effort. And I never knew sometimes if Brody was being serious or not. I never knew. I never knew if he was being serious or not a lot of times. But I bet if I'd have spent maybe a little more time getting to know him, then I would have known more. But I mean, that can be said for anyone, and your life goes the way it goes, and you can't know everybody. But it definitely seemed like I haven't heard anyone say, oh, there were all these warning signs. There was the fact that he was changing medication, or got off his medication, was getting back on his medication. And that, apparently there's a pretty big dip sometimes when that happens in your, serotonin levels, or I don't know. I'm going out on, everyday Jackson rhetoric here. Or everyday Jackson diatribe. I'm just talking out of my butt, but also with some of my brain in there. But that he went off on those, and he got back on, and there was a dip in there, and then that's, whenever he found some, maybe a level of discomfort hit him, and his brain wasn't at a level where it could handle it or something. I don't know. We'll never really know. So, and it's crazy to think if it's unpreventable. I mean, it would have been preventable if he didn't switch his medications, maybe. But it didn't seem like anything anybody could have said that day or did that day. And you can't spend every night with someone that you don't, we can't, people can only really do what they're doing and do the best that they are doing in a specific instance. And, and the hanging part is what also gets me out, with Robin Williams hung himself. It's such a, and I don't mean this in a base way, but I mean this it's such a performer thing. It's such a display. It's like your last bit. It's like, oh, I need to show you that I'm not doing well. And I couldn't show anyone how bad I'm feeling or how uncomfortable I feel except with this last display of art. Because it's such a presentation, It's such a specific thing. It's like I need to stop my head. Like I need to litigate my head from my body. That's not called ligature. Oh, ligature. Yeah, I need to stop. I need to stop this head from infecting the rest of me. And this is the only way I know how to do it, is to literally, or not literally, but, I don't know, just to cut it off at the pass. I need to tighten right here so that my brain doesn't keep bothering the rest of me. And I didn't mean to get on, it's just sad, man. It's very sad. And people say suicide is selfish, and yeah, I think suicide is a selfish thing. I mean, yeah, it's you, but it's your life, it's your relation with the world. But I just don't know how this would have been preventable. Unless his medication, maybe he didn't or if he wasn't. I'm not sure if a doctor recommended that he switch with his medication and get off and get back on, or I don't know. Man, it's sad though. It's sad to think that there was this being that's just not here now. But I do hope that he's somewhere where he is at a lot more at peace, and I'm sure that he is. It's heartbreaking. You know, one of the saddest things I feel like, or one thing that I feel like is sad, and I don't know if this is judgmental in some way, but Brody did a great job of, the Comedy Store has there's a lot of comics a lot of the same comics work there. It's just like a lot of comics that are doing well right now, and those change over time. And Brody always had kind of the later night spots. So he always was kind of like the king of this sort of later night group of comedians in a way that were that are great comedians, but just aren't in the top 4 or 5 spots. And I'm out there sort of in the middle of those groups, which I'm grateful to be in. And that's their judgment of me. And I'm happy to be at the Comedy Store. It's the only place in LA that I really feel comfortable. And Brody was kind of right. Yeah. Into these sort of late night spots where he kind of held down. He was kind of like the king of this little late night kind of crew. And, and I just know they're all going to miss their fearless leader that had all this experience. But rest in peace, bud. We love you. And I'm sorry that we didn't tell you that more.